Hey guys, I am back. I know it has been a minute. I went to college, as you can see from the bleak backdrop behind me. I don't really decorate my rooms, so it looks a little grim. Um, I promise it's not actually that bad. You can't see my desk, which is actually very nice. I don't know how I'm feeling about this setup. We're gonna see. We're gonna run with it today. I might change it in the future. I might be sitting in a different spot. Might do something completely different. But we're gonna use this today. It's not horrible. One apology. I don't know if you can you hear that? Like my yeah, dorm chair doors are going to be shutting, slamming sometimes. I apologize. There's nothing I can do about it. And I have a giant bay window right here that cars drive past frequently. Nothing I can do about these things. But we're going to do this anyways. I am trying to get back to doing some YouTube stuff. Like I said, I am back at college, so I'm way busier. There's a lot more going on, and it's not as easy to sit down and do something like this because I have a lot of research that goes into it and stuff. Like I research my short form content, but these are longer and I do way more research. So I'm gonna try to keep up with this stuff, but we'll see. So I want to talk about something that's been going on in the British Isles today, and that is this sort of boiling point that they have reached. We're gonna be covering a few events, some in brevity, some in a little more detail, and we're also gonna just be covering a few concepts. I'm going for my first ever short video. We'll see if I can do it. I have hope. I have belief in me. So we're going to be talking about stuff like that and just sort of looking at a overview of why the UK might be at this tension level that it's currently at. So without further ado, let's talk about the very first thing, and that is what happened on the 13th, so yesterday, because I'm filming this on the 14th, and that is the Unite the Kingdom rally that happened on September 13th, 2025. Very pivotal point, I feel like, in how the environment in the British Isles is really looking right now. It was put on by Tommy Robinson, who I'd heard about before, a right-wing guy, right? You've probably heard that he's anti-Muslim, racist, extremist, and you might know that he went to jail. What you might not know is why he went to jail, because I knew that he went to jail, but I didn't know why he went to jail, and I found that out researching a completely unrelated thing besides this rally, which was shocking. He went to jail for recording trials of grooming gangs that the British authorities had deemed too dangerous to be allowed to be seen by the public. So yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. But the United Kingdom rally focused heavily on freedom of speech, like the concepts of the First Amendment in America, which would include freedom of journalism, which would mean, yeah. Anyways, freedom of speech, anti-illegal immigration, some anti-Muslim sentiment, I will say, but that was primarily focused at Sharia law, as well as a little bit of memoriam to Charlie Kirk. So there was around 100,000 to 150,000 ralliers, we'll call them ralliers or rally goers in attendance, with around 5,000 protesters to show up. These were anti-racist and we'll also say like pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine protesters there to push back against the, well, rally goers, the attendees. I'm going to put in some footage of that somewhere throughout this clip that sort of shows them on one side and the protesters on the other with the police in the middle. I put it up on my social medias and I captioned it something like, it's a bit of a chilling image because it really shows the West against the East, specifically the Middle East, with a corrupt government in between it. Very unfortunate sight because, it's not, I don't want to say because I'm going to get into this a lot more in this video. I do want to say that it's not about this color, it's not about the skin color, it's about the culture. Muslim culture, and some of the other cultures I'm going to talk about in this that have really taken root in the British Isles is not something that is generally viewed as the West as compatible. That's because the West has traditions and morals that these, sorry, my hat's bugging, there we go. Traditions and morals that these cultures kind of circumvent and, I just made it worse, circumvent and ignore. They don't share the same beliefs and morals that people in the West do. So that's part of why this happened.
That you can put there to stop people coming through. You can push against people. We've seen previous events where they prefer just to have officers, dare I say you.
So another part of the rally, or whatever you want to call it, was clashes between police and protesters. Now this is unfortunate, I will say. Unite the Kingdom rally goers did break the barricade and push through into areas they were not supposed to be, which is unfortunate and disruptive and not necessarily helpful to any cause. but also the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, anti-racist protesters also clashed with police trying to get to the ralliers. So both sides were not well behaved at all times, and it's frustrating to see that. I understand the tension and pressure that the right is feeling, and I mean, if you truly believe that Muslim culture is good and that, these people are truly racist and are truly harmful to this culture, then I can kind of understand being fired up to protest against them. I mean, freedom of speech is what they were rallying for, so of course you have the right to protest and be wrong in that instance. But it's still unfortunate, but both sides clash with the police, although I'm not surprised on either side because you do have a ton of right-wing people who are very upset, and then of course the left. The left can't behave. We've known this for a while now. So it's minimally surprising that both sides got into a fight, very, very much so. One person who was in attendance, was Katie Hopkins, who you may or may not know. Although I hope you know, because she is pretty impressive. She's supposed to be a comedian. However, I don't find her personally that funny. But she is supposed to be a comedian. I don't find her funny. I do find her to be an incredible journalist. I do find what she's done and what she's gone up against to be something that's very impressive. But she gave a speech. And I'm actually going to play a clip from that speech.
But it doesn't matter. They can put us in prison. They can shoot us. They can lock us up, but they will not stop us now. Because we are not here because we hate. We are not here because we want bad things for other people. We are here because we grew up knowing freedoms, and we will get those freedoms back for our kids and our grandchildren. Yes, we will.
So yeah, a very impressive speech. This is one small clip from it. It was about 5 minutes long in total. I listened to the whole thing. I enjoyed it. I was impressed. There was a lot of claims that this whole event was based in racism, and one reason for these claims was the flying of the Union Jack and the cross. If the sight of your country's flag makes you think racist, which we've had this issue in America, where people automatically associate the American flag with the right and racism, if that's what your party believes, that the flag of your country is racist, you're the problem. Okay? You're the problem. Mm-hmm. You are. So yeah, if you see your country's flag and think racism, you are the problem. The whole problem, actually. Probably. I mean, you could be right in some instances. This isn't one of them. Lord have mercy. It was just a really, really impressive event, in my opinion. And interestingly timed. I don't know exactly, obviously, when this was planned and when this was designed to take place, if this was spurred on by the assassination or if it was just coincidental. But either way, impressive, and I wouldn't necessarily say I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see the people who didn't get into fights with the police. I mean, some of the pictures that came out of this were absolutely badass. Like, they're dope. And so I'm not happy to see the clashes with the police. However, I am happy to see this many people standing up for their country and standing up for Western beliefs and saying, hey, these cultures they don't work with us. They don't work with our Western culture. They don't work with our beliefs. And yeah, we are going to talk about something next that is a little bit more grim. Is that a good word for this? Grim? Because it is something, it takes what the left is acting like this was, and it actually is, and it's over essentially the same thing, although the kickoff point for this, I don't really give content warnings, but yeah. So we're going to talk about the Ireland riots. Those lasted from 6/10/2025 to 6/13/2025. 100 plus rioters attacking police and infrastructure, setting fire to parts of Northern Ireland, particularly and specifically, it's been a morning, um, in Belfast. This is in response to two 14-year-old Romanian boys being accused of raping a girl. This was via oral sexual assault. Like I said, this is content warning. Although this did take place in Belima. Now, this whole thing started on social media when a father of a different girl who was raped, he called for basically a meeting, a vigil of sorts, of people to sort of stand against the fact that this has been happening in the UK. And we're going to way more into that in a second. But this has been happening in the UK a lot, where you have these immigrants doing these things. And so the father wanted to hold a vigil and sort of stand in opposition to this as a group. This was supposed to take place at Ken's car park at 7:30 p.m. on Monday. By 10 p.m. that Monday, the vigil turned into a fiery riot. And I'm saying fiery, not bloody yet, because all that was happening was fires were started and some people were trying to break into buildings. And actually, here is some footage from that.
What happened?
What did they say?
So yeah, by 10:30 p.m., those fires had started. They were burning down barricades. They were trying to get through windows and breaking stuff. If you watched my video on the DC takeover, you know my opinions on rioting. I'm not a fan of it. It's not good behavior. And we are talking about, in this certain context, things that go against Western values. By no means do I condone this behavior. However, what I do condone is the sentiment of pushing back against corrupt governments that have allowed Western culture to be perverted and have allowed sexual assault to be committed against young women and girls repetitively and have ignored the problem. So, it escalated quickly into police and rioters clashing with one another. Slogans of "Ireland is full" and "We want our country back" were chanted by the rioters. Again, not condoning this behavior. Now let's talk about what the media labeled this. I will say, I would label this as violent and stupid. I would label this as a waste of time and not how we need to get things done. If you really want to go there, you're going to start a civil war. And we can save the West without that. And I would prefer the West saved without that. We don't need that. That's just not it. It's not going to be good for anybody. And with what's happened recently, there's been more and more calls for essentially a Western civil war. And I am not happy about that at all. But the media had a different spin on this. The media was calling it racist. I'm going to tell you right now, if you have an issue with culture and behavior, and that culture and behavior seems to be practiced by a specific group of people, that doesn't make you racist. Because it's not all people who look like that they have an issue with. They have an issue with people who practice this specific culture. Because there are white people who are Muslim, and they still have an issue with it. Okay? This isn't necessarily racist. This is against a culture and a religion that celebrates things like child marriage, stoning women to death, throwing gay people off of buildings, and murdering Christians because they don't believe in Allah. So, racist? No. They also called it incoherent. Watched a lot of footage, watched and went through a lot of stuff about this. Incoherent was not something that I saw. There was a very clear message. Ireland is tired of immigrants who do not believe in Western values, who are illegal for the most part, and who commit sex crimes specifically against minors. Not very incoherent. I feel like that's pretty but okay. I'm really they labeled the Unite the Kingdom rally as racist, as neo-Nazi, as all this shit, when it wasn't. And it's just the same sort of rhetoric that caused the recent assassination. I'm just saying, they don't call you a Nazi because they believe you're a Nazi. They call you a Nazi so that they can justify killing you. This is actually something that the fascists in Italy came up with. This is how they did what they did. They started this practice, and this is a tangent, but they started this practice of calling their political adversaries fascists. Fascists started the practice of calling their political adversaries fascists so that they could then take them out and be justified in doing that and say, look, I killed a fascist to save you. This is not new. And it's this sort of shit that causes it. Because yes, these people might be against a specific culture and you might not like that. But that doesn't make them Nazis. That doesn't make them racist. It's not like they were marching through the street and screaming, get rid of all brown people. No, they were marching through the street and saying, stop illegal immigration. They were marching through the street and saying, protect freedom of speech. They were marching through the streets and saying, protect Western values. That doesn't make them racist. That makes them people fighting for their country and fighting for their culture during the takeover of another culture. This rhetoric of constantly disagreeing with people and using extremist language to define them when you don't even actually intellectually interact with their arguments is what causes things like what happened last week. This is being filmed on 9/14/2025, so it's disgusting. And fun fact, behavior was started by fascists in Italy. So sorry for that tangent. I just wanted to, obviously I do not condone rioting. However, I also don't condone this bullshit because it's gotten someone killed. Anyways, as of April 2023, immigration reached a 16-year high of 600,000. 141,600. I don't know. Apologies. Anyways, this was in Ireland, and in 2023, it reached that 16-year high. I'm going to read a quote, so I'm trying to stay away from those more, just because I watched one of my videos back during the abortion thing, and I'm like, this is over 50% me just reading quotes. That's bleak. But I am going to read one quote. New PSNI annual report shows 2,049, I can do that number, 2,049 racist incidents and 1,329 race hate crimes. Pause. Racist incidents and race hate crimes in the British Isles means you said something they didn't like. Actually, fun fact, pointing out the rape gangs, also referred to as grooming gangs to make it sound better, critiquing the rape gangs can be considered racist. We're going to get into that, although I am already at 18 minutes. Shit. Anyways, detailing the highest level recorded since records began. Sorry, I'm dyslexic, leave me alone. Detailing the highest level recorded since records began in 2004, the year ending June 2025 shows the worst ever period for racist hate crime after riot and migrants attacked. Amnesty is calling for a new Amnesty is calling for a new anti-racism strategy and justice for victims. Hate crime thrives and politicians deliver words but no action. Racism has no place here, and it's time for our institutions to provide it. Patrick Corrigan. That's the gentleman who I'm quoting. When they say racist, they do mean speech. What isn't okay is assaulting someone because of their race. That's a hate crime. That's gross. That's foul. That's what Jussie Smollett pretended happened to him without his sexual orientation. And again, I go back to I don't accept the juxtaposition that this is all racist. Yes, I'm sure there was some racism involved. I'm sure there were some racists at the Unite the Kingdom rally. I'm sure there were some racists in these riots. I truly do think, though, this is Western people tired of their culture being invaded by Eastern and Middle Eastern, South Asian ideals. This disgusting culture that allows things that are just, we're going to talk about that at a later date. I don't have time for that in this video. So what I do want to ask and do want to talk about a little bit, and this comes from another article I read that was essentially talking about how some immigrants do feel concerned. And I do kind of agree with this, because not all immigrants from those countries are bad. Not all immigrants from those regions are bad. Not all immigrants from those cultures are bad. It's the ones who don't do certain things. And so my question is, where is the line? What are the things that separate the people from those cultures who are a problem and who are a threat to the West from the people from those cultures who are not a problem and who are a benefit to the West? And I think I kind of know where the line is, but I'm going to ask you guys. So respond in the comments. Where is that line? Is it assimilation? Is it naturalization? Is it natural birth? Are historical racial groups really the answer? Or is it selectionism? Y'all tell me below which of those you think it is. And I'm going to tell you my opinion real quick right now. I really think it's selectionism and assimilation that allows us to be able to bring in people from other places into the West, into any country really, that makes it beneficial. You can't just let anybody in. You let a bum in, what are they going to do? They're going to drain the system. They're going to take money from hardworking taxpayers, and they're just going to cause problems. But if you vet your people, if you use a selectionist immigration policy that vets people coming into your country and selects the best of the best to come in and benefit your society, then you're automatically starting off better. And then if assimilation is not necessarily legally required, but is the cultural expectation, and it is okay to not accept anything less, then they're going to assimilate and they're not going to pervert our culture. Now, of course, Western culture probably has some things that can be critiqued about it. However, when we are talking about this specific cultural difference, there is not a lot there that is redeemable for the other culture. And whereas Western's cultures might exist, there might be problems there might be areas of improvement, as my organizational behavior professor calls it, an area of opportunity. There might be that in Western culture. There are millions of areas and opportunities in these other cultures, though. They are barbarous. They celebrate things that are disgusting, pervasive, and have no place in the West. Although apparently they do have places in the West, but we're not going to. Celebrating the murder and assassination of someone simply because they had speech you didn't like is a sign that you are a whole ass problem. People are getting trashed. That's awesome. I'm not going to run through all of these statistics because we're already at 20-some minutes. But I'm going to hit a few things real quick. So from 2020 to September 2024, the UK saw 175,000 plus. Dyspraxia is so much fun. Illegal immigrants in the UK. So 175,000. Wait, was that right? Anyways, illegal immigrants in the UK. This is a heavy increase in recent times, in unauthorized, that's what they call them. They call them unauthorized immigrations. They're illegal. Just call them what they are. Please and thank you. Heavy increase in recent times in unauthorized, illegal immigration. They've been denied asylum. So I will say the UK is denying asylum much more. They've stricken regulations on illegal immigration and asylum seeking, and this is from 2023 to about 2025, although 125,000 illegal immigrants are awaiting decision in the UK to be allowed entry. What becomes even more interesting is how they're getting there. They are leaving essentially France and Spain. They are leaving France and Spain, hopping in tiny boats and taking them across the channel into the UK. Riddle me this. Riddle me this. You're leaving continental Europe, hopping on a boat and going to a small island. Why? The other countries are just as liberal, I mean, except for maybe like Italy and Poland, and Germany is doing some interesting things. Everywhere else in there is going to accept you. Actually, wait, no, Portugal won't. Portugal won't let you marry a kid. I'm sorry. Did I forget about that? My bad. That was recent. My bad. My bad. I get it now. You can't marry a kid in Portugal. So sorry. I get why you're not going there. But what about France? France is pretty fucking liberal. Like, why are we crossing the channel to specifically go to the UK in these numbers? What is the point? What is the point? Anyways, small boat crossing is the most common method of illegal entry in the UK, with a major spike in the number of individuals per boat as well. I think in 2024, the average was 51 people per small boat, which is wild. Over 1 million illegal immigrants have entered the UK since 2001, and we're just talking about the UK. We're not talking about Ireland as well. Ireland is sending illegal immigrants back to the UK. That's what they're doing. You cross from the UK into Ireland, they will send you right the fuck back. I do have a quote here too that I'm going to read. If they don't have the status to be in Ireland, we bring them to Dublin. They're removed on a ferry back to the UK on the same day. And that is a quote directly from the head of the Garde Nationale, Immigration Bureau, Deputy Chief Superintendent Aidan Minnock. I think I got all those titles right. But I mean, I respect it. If they don't have the status to be in Ireland, they literally just ship them back. Same day return. Same day return. It's like Amazon, but for people who shouldn't be in your country. Ireland has seen a massive spike in illegal immigration, though, from its southern border. This uptake is accredited due to stricter laws in the UK. Like I said, it's harder to get asylum, although it hasn't necessarily slowed them down. They're now just going through and going into the UK. So it is harder for them to get asylum in the UK, but it's not as hard for them to get asylum in Ireland, supposedly, although clearly they're cracking down on that. So there is an uptick in it basically kind of looks like this. They either come in from the south into Ireland, or they come in the south into England. And then seemingly, they cross the channel. And then they cross the channel. And then they cross the channel. They also, the UK is now threatening more strict deportation laws. We're going to get a little bit more into that in a minute. And this would send them back to African countries, Middle Eastern countries, and Southern Asian countries. And they don't want that. I'm not going to ask the obvious question. Also, Ireland's economy is flourishing, which adds to the appeal. Anti-immigration sentiment is common in Ireland. Illegal immigrants are taking housing, jobs, and other resources from Irish citizens. And I will say this is a sentiment felt strongest by natural-born citizens and people who have traditional and ancestral claims to the land. I mean, yeah, you might argue that white Americans don't belong in America. Cool. You know who is indigenous and who does have an ancestral claim to the British Isles? White people. Like, so that argument doesn't necessarily work there. Jumping a little bit southern in between the two, we're going to talk about the Isle of Man real quick, just because I think it's funny. So the Isle of Man just doesn't play this fucking game. They don't do asylum seekers. They don't do illegal immigrants. There's a group in the Isle of Man called the MHK, and they really want lessened restrictions in the Isle of Man for asylum seekers from Ukraine, and they did consider it briefly. Got bad news for you. Not gonna happen. The Isle of Man just literally says, nope. They have a statement out that basically says, if you are an employer, you are responsible for making sure your employees are citizens of the Isle of Man, Ireland, or Britain. And if they aren't, that's on you. And you in trouble. Big trouble. Because that's not okay in their book. So they don't play that game. To the point of they actually had a drug scandal in the Isle of Man thanks to Brits coming from Liverpool via the airport of the Isle of Man, and going to Douglas. Douglas is a large city in the Isle of Man. This is a very tiny island. The Isle does allow for British and UK citizens to come and go freely because they have a common travel area with those two countries. All three of them have this common travel area. I will say the Isle of Man is a self-governed, what's the term? Like, not client country, but they're underneath the UK in a way, but they are self-governed. Kind of like how Puerto Rico works for us, or DC, to a certain degree. But yeah, they don't play this game, and because of this drug scandal, which was being run from inside a jail too, which is kind of funny, they got even more pissy. They're like, do we have to have this back and forth thing going on with you guys, or can we just like lock the door, throw away the key, and never let anybody else in here? So they don't play that shit. Unlike Ireland and the UK, the Isle of Man just doesn't play that shit. Alright, speedrunning something real quick, that it was an interesting story. Shit, I'm at 30 minutes. Well, I tried. In Northern Ireland, on 7/10/2025, there was an effigy of, essentially, it was a migration boat effigy. It was a giant pillar, or a giant pyre, with a boat on top that had about a dozen life-size dummies on it. This effigy was burned and now is being investigated as a hate crime. This was anti-immigration. It was strictly anti-immigration. It had the following slogans on it: stop the boats, veterans before refugees, stop illegal immigration. This was in Moygashel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and fireworks accompanied fire. Now, this was all sort of around a July 12th celebration where over 300 bonfires were lit, and this is sort of when Ireland celebrates when King William III overtook the Catholic King James and sort of cemented part of Ireland's independence as a free nation. This is a lot like our Independence Day. And so, in a similar sentiment to these people who truly feel like their culture and their country has been invaded by a foreign culture that is pervasive and has no place in the West, they lit an effigy. And now it's being looked into as a hate crime. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, I live in the US where we have freedom of speech. And freedom of speech actually goes as far, despite our president's recent attempts, freedom of speech goes as far as to allow you to burn the American flag. So I see no issue, as long as they were within fire ordinances, which it sounds like they were, because it was part of one of these celebrations. I see no issue with them doing that. Is it a little bit crass? Yes. Is it something that you should be able, as a Western country in a free society, to charge somebody with? No. Moving on, we're going to talk about something. I'm going to do a full video on this, so we're going to briefly hit some points. So, rape gangs in the UK reportedly have existed since 1999 or earlier, as early as before the 1990s. I'm calling them rape gangs. They're called grooming. How long does it take you to shave? I'm so sorry. I don't know if y'all can even hear that, but there is somebody shaving, and it is bugging me. Anyways, minimum of 26 years of rape gangs with when it was positioned. Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm going to call them rape gangs. I am not calling them grooming gangs. Because yes, they groom kids. You know what they groom kids to do? Rape. Predominantly, these gangs are made up of, thank God, he stops, are made up of Middle Eastern and Southern Asian peoples. Who are Middle Eastern and Southern Asian peoples? Muslims, Arabs, Pakistanis, Indians. I'll put up the two regions on the map. I'll put up a map of the two regions on the screen. I need more coffee. Kidding, not really. But this is predominantly where they come from. Now, there are some white people in these gangs, and whether or not they're Muslim or not, I couldn't tell you. I'm not trying to make this a race thing. I'm making this a culture thing. This isn't a race thing, this is a culture thing. Cool, glad I could set that straight. An overwhelming majority of rape gang members are these cultures and ethnicities, by the way. Just saying it, like, majority, like, overwhelming, like, yeah. What's interesting, and I mentioned this earlier, criticizing these gangs is seen as racist, xenophobic, and bigoted, and is considered a conspiracy theory and extremist by some leftist groups. I just want to sort of have a timeline and like list of offenses and stuff for that video because I went ahead and did a bunch of research. We're gonna mention a few things. In 2010, 11 predominantly Middle Eastern and South Asian men were convicted of sex crimes against children in Derbyshire. They had a literal plan where they would get these kids, groom them, coerce them, rape them, and release them. And this went on for years, and there was 11 men in this. What's really interesting, and I mentioned this earlier, so in 2017, 29 men from a Huddersfield grooming gang were charged with sexually abusing and raping minors. The government put reporting restrictions to prevent the media from reporting on the case to hide it from the public, claiming it would cause bias and racism. This ban was criticized by Tommy Robinson, who was later jailed for 13 months, which was eventually reduced to 9 months, for admitting contempt. So contempt means you're in violation of the order of the court, not like order as in being told what to do, order as in like Robert's Rules of Order. So contempt means you're in violation of the order of the court. And he was found in contempt and confessed to being in contempt for filming the proceedings of this trial from outside the courtroom, looking in to make sure the public knew what was happening. Because the British government, the UK government, did not want this story to get out. They tried to cover it up, and this dude went to jail for releasing it. You know what we call that in America? You know what I call that? Top-tier investigative journalism and a hero. Yeah, he might say some fucked up shit. I really don't know. I haven't done research into this guy, and I'm just preparing for the comments. But that is the actions, that is the behavior of a dictatorship and of people who are doing something fucked up, and they know it. I visited the UK recently. A few months ago. While I was there, I spent some time in London. Now, there have been talks that London is no longer a British city, and I fully agree with that. London is a Sharia city. If you don't know what Sharia law is, and we're going to do a full video on this, probably, we'll see. Sharia law is essentially Muslim rules of order, Muslim law, think kind of like Jewish law, except extreme. Sharia law allows for some really, really wild things, and I actually have if I can find it very quickly, I have a short list of a few things that are perfectly legal in Sharia law that just, they turn my stomach, if I'm being fully honest. The liberals back Muslim culture in a way that it makes no sense to me. I'm just going to be oh so honest. It doesn't make sense to me. I cannot find it. So, this brief list, and I'm going to be reading. Bear with me. I'm teasing. Yes, I'm dyslexic. Yes, it's a problem. That light gives me a headache. That is not fun to read off of, and I'm doing a lot of this, so my mouth's dry. So yes, I fumble my words, and I do apologize. But we get through it together. But we're going to talk about a few elements of Sharia law real quick. First and foremost, theft is punishable by amputation of the hands. I don't know about you, but to me, a Christian, a law that says that, based off another religion, Islam, that seems a little extreme because it sort of makes it really hard for them to be rehabilitated. It makes them really hard for them to repent and then use those same hands for good if they ain't got their hand no more. Criticizing or denying any part of the Quran is punishable by death under Sharia law. Oh my God. Is punishable by death under Sharia law, which, again, as a Christian, couldn't fathom. You're allowed to criticize Jesus, and it's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan when people do it and get disrespectful. I mean, if you have actual intellectual questions and criticisms, pop off. If you just want to be a dick, weirdo. Anyways, homosexuality is punishable by death, but, okay, this one sends me into a spark. Homosexuality, they'll kill you for it. However, if you sodomize a little boy, that's fine. girls' clitorises are required to be cut by Sharia law. I know a lot of people have issues with circumcision in men. There's good hygiene reason. We're not going to get into that. However, it's not as brutal as... we're moving on. Girls can be sodomized until... Wait, what? Girls can be sodomized until and vaginally raped after 8 years of age. If y'all don't know what sodomy means, it just means non-vaginal sex. So, until girls are 8, it's perfectly legal. It's actually allowed under Sharia law to sodomize a girl under 8 years old. And after they turn 8, it's allowed to rape them. Definitely a culture and religion that's totally compatible with Western society, and I don't want to hear dick about anything like that. They don't practice it. You can marry a 12-year-old in Iran. We're gonna just skim through this real quick. Give me just 1 second. A woman can have 1 husband who can have up to 4 wives, because that's equality. A divorced wife loses custody of all her children over 6 years of age. And when they get older than 6, if they weren't older than 6 when they divorced, she loses them. I'm done. You get the point. This is something that they've been trying to implement in the UK. Wouldn't you be kind of pissed? And then last but not least, the last thing we're going to talk about today is the Online Safety Act, or the Internet Safety Act, or the UK government decided that 1984 was a to-do list. This book, they looked at this book and said, to-do list. That's what that is. Again, I'm going to do a deeper video on this. However, what we are going to talk about is just a few little, things. So there was a woman imprisoned for 41 months for a tweet, which is a longer sentence than a rapist got in the UK. Just so we're going to put that into perspective on the forefront. Why is a rapist getting only 41 months? On the second front, why is a tweet getting a longer sentence than rape? It focuses a lot on hate speech, even though it claims not to. It requires forced ID for the access of any adult material. It really restricts the ability to be an anonymous source. So think about Wikipedia, think about people fleeing war-torn countries, trying to blow the whistle on corrupt corporations or corrupt governments. Yeah, it destroys their anonymity. That's not okay. At all. Satire is actually in violation of certain anti-hate speech laws that are sort of implemented in the sphere of the Online Safety Act. I will say, its original intention was to protect minors from pornography. Do I think pornography is bad? And I'm just going to give a quick opinion on this. Do I think pornography is bad? Yes. Should it be banned by governments? No. Should it be used as an excuse to allow Orwellian laws to take place? Fuck no. That falls on the parents. That falls on education that the government can fund. The government can use taxpayer dollars when they teach sex ed to teach about the harmful effects of pornography. And parents can get involved in their kids' life and check what their kids are doing online and making sure they're not doing those things. It is not the place of the government to spy on people and to enforce very restrictive anti-free speech laws, Orwellian laws, that then allow them to do this in the name of protecting children from pornography, when so far the laws haven't even been implemented for that, but it's been implemented and its effects have caused so many other issues. The sale of VPNs has skyrocketed since this took place. Historical information such as the Crusades, Roman history, Richard Lionheart. Yeah, you can't look those up without verifying your age in the UK now, because it doesn't just target pornography. It targets any and all mature content, and the definition of mature content is as loose as humanly possible. Also, the bill that was initially written, this initial act, basically is written in the most convoluted way possible, but it caps itself at 18. So essentially it's designed to keep 18-year-olds away from this content. Except, fun fact, the UK is trying to drop the voter registration age to 16. So you're going to tell me you're not going to allow 16-year-olds to look at adult content and learn about adult issues such as the Crusades. Bring back the Crusades. But you are going to have them vote. Yeah, that's giving no voter ID, which is something the Democrats here in America push. Like that's giving that level of trying to force incompetent people to vote for you. Because that's what you would create. I'm not even saying that these kids are stupid. You would create incompetent people because they couldn't even access news websites. The New York Times is on a list of sites that you need to verify your age to get into. Actually, I also have another book. Fucktards. Yeah. All of that is why the UK is collectively losing its shit. And there's actually more to it. And did I say I meant the British Isles? There's a lot more to it. In nuance, in detail, in specific cases and specific crimes, but those are the like really major big picture stuff that is going on that is really fueling this tension and this dissent, this feeling that their government has basically abandoned them. Yeah. Illegal immigration, Sharia law, rape gangs, violations of freedom of speech, and Orwellian law. It is no surprise that the British Isles are losing their shit, that they've hit this tension, that they are rallying and rioting. Am I a fan of the rioting? No. Do I fully back the rallying? Yes. That's a peaceful form of protest. Do it. Do it, do it, do it. But I would say, time and time again, do not stoop to their level. Violence begots violence. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And we are not to a point yet where the other side has done acts that are actual declaration of civil war. And we don't want to be the side that declares that. We don't want to be the side that goes down that path. We don't want to be a people that divides ourselves like that. Because while, yes, we could, scrub the West of these ideologies and these stuff, we could also lose. You do know that, right? And so if we can solve this amicably, if we can solve this without more bloodshed, that is the best choice. And so I encourage UK citizens to continue putting their flag up everywhere, to continue supporting Western values, to continue speaking out against these cultures that are abhorrent and abominations in the face of the Western world, to continue rallying and peacefully protesting, but do not riot, do not spill blood, do not do things that they would do to silence us because they disagree with us. I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you all in the next one. I am going to go to brunch and have a wonderful rest of my day. It is a Sunday, so I will see you guys later. Yeah. Just be better than them. Stand up for what you believe in. Do not stoop to their level. And may the West and freedom fly high. Glory be to God. I will see you all in the next one.